All right, we're going to try to explain what I did, how I did it, the results, and what was taken to a stranger. I am nervous. Because what I did is I figured out the biochemical cascade that produces autism traits and comorbid traits and what makes them cluster. So first I have to explain what I did in general, then how I did it. And then I explain the results of that test, the biochemical cascade and clustering. Then I can explain what was taken. So we have the what I did. I created the blueprint of the smallest functional parts in the body. Those are the gene-coded proteins. Figured out what wasn't working within the blueprint of autistics by troubleshooting it against biomarkers in the research. That's what gave me the biochemical cascade that is most likely responsible for autism traits specifically, comorbid traits specifically, and then why they would cluster together based on regulatory mechanisms. See, it's so hard to explain without using nuance. I hope I'm doing this good enough. And then I start thinking to myself, that tells him nothing about what the biochemical cascade is, just that there's a biochemical cascade. Nothing about what the specific regulatory mechanisms are that make them cluster. So then how do I explain what was taken without that nuance? Which brings us back to explaining the biochemical cascade and clustering results. Before I can even explain what was taken, it's easier to grasp the what. That's why I usually just use the headline, gene mutations that induce a stress response that is prioritized over typical development and typical function in biochemically predictable ways. So really it's gene mutations within one or more of the regulatory systems, which are nervous system, metabolism, immune system, cellular repair, genetic regulation, that induce the BH4 shunt that causes the trifurcation of resources, one of which leads to comorbid traits, one of which leads to autism, and one of which leads to stress adaptive signaling differences. Not only that, the comorbid traits will be predictable based on which regulatory system has been activated chronically by the gene mutation itself, and then how they're reallocated as part of that process. And then based on that specific biochemical cascade within the overarching biochemical cascade, you get the predictable clustering of autism and the comorbid traits. And then once you understand all of that, you can understand which parts were taken by who in the research. Right, because, okay, Naveau puts out this 3-hit model. Well, 3-hit model, that's a heading. That doesn't tell you what exactly the 3-hit model is mechanistically. And that 3-hit model contains everything with a yellow check mark. Oh, look at that. It falls exactly within my entire framework and the biochemical cascade. Cool. Sure, that's a coincidence, unsighted. Next up, we have the autism study that uncovers biologically distinct subtypes. Does that tell you what the biologically distinct subtypes are? No, just the fact that there are, right? Well, when you read the study itself, what they did was they clustered autism and comorbid traits, grouped them into different phenotypes, then figured out which gene mutations were in each phenotype and how they impacted the different biochemical pathway activity underlying each phenotype. Oh, look, it falls directly within my framework. Sure, that's also a coincidence. Oh, look, autism symptoms vanish in mice after Stanford's brain breakthrough. Oh, it's theirs. This is their breakthrough. I'm sure this is just a coincidence after Stanford's neurodiversity project reached out to me in 2023, asking for my information, saying that the teams are talking about it, just to target the most downstream mechanism that I delineate as responsible for autism-specific core traits in my framework. I'm sure that's a coincidence. Brazilian researcher Alexandre Latini using my BH4 shunt molecular mechanism linking autism to the comorbidities pathologically unsighted. Saying this theory exists out there in the land, but we don't know where it's from. It appeared out of thin air. Oh, look, it's in my framework. Oh, look, I wrote the book on it in 2023. Just to have them print it in 2025. I, of course, contact the journal and I let them know. And they say, oh, well, we've known the role of BH4 in the entire human body for a while, and we know that levels are low in autistics, so therefore, it's not plagiarism. Excuse me, is that the BH4 shunt mechanism and a whole mechanistic framework behind why? Like logistically, this shunt can create autism traits and comorbid traits at the same time and results in them clustering? Is that the framework? No. So what? Flabbergasted. But can I express all of this in detail without explaining the hyper-specific nuance? No, and that is why my flabbers are gasted when someone says, your framework is just so general. So there's no way they couldn't have taken it. They would have come across it anyways. It's just gene mutations cause stress. What? The heading is general because headings are general. The science is not.